Welcome back to episode 92 of Warriors Den. Today's guest is Dennis Hill. He runs Krav Maga and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, among other things, in Connecticut. The programs he runs expand to also combat Hapkido, Judo, Kali, Muay Thai, fitness, kettlebells, HIIT, and kids programs, of course. So a little bit about Dennis. As per his website, ctkravmagamma.com. Dennis Hill, chief instructor, has trained military personnel, police officers, and detectives. He is a 5th degree black belt and master instructor in combat Hapkido, a black belt in Judo, a 1st degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and a black belt and certified instructor in Israeli Krav Maga. Dennis also trains in Kali with Paul Kitchum. He earned his certificate in kettlebells from Pavel Tsatsouline and has trained in wrestling for 8 years with Master of Sport Joseph Vigdorchik, Russian freestyle wrestler. Dennis is certified MetaFit and MetaPRW coach and certified NRA instructor. In addition, Dennis is very interested in health and wellness and is a certified precision nutrition coach, certified Dr. Sears Health Coach, certified diabetes prevention program, DPP lifestyle coach, and certified personal trainer. He is also a DOT certified fitness professional. So I asked Dennis to come on because it's always interesting when someone has a wide traditional martial arts background and decides to still teach Krav Maga, because it's very easy for them to turn their back on Krav Maga or to bastardize it in a strange way. But here's what Dennis had to say about Krav Maga.
A great system for somebody to come into and for somebody to grow in if they want something that's broad, but maybe not too deep, but it's broad. I mean, there's a lot you got to learn. And you know, I mean, you got to learn your punching, your blocking, your blades, your sticks, your firearms, all of that, your grappling. But it doesn't run too deep in any of those things. And that's why I like having the other martial arts, so that if you find that you're connected to this type of training, keep coming to Krav Maga. But if you like, you know, let's say grappling, because that's a big one. If you enjoy the grappling, then hey, cross-training jiu-jitsu.
How did you think of that sentiment? So I really enjoyed the fact that he understands Krav Maga is broad to deal with multiple situations, not specific to the ring, not specific to rules. You learn broadly, and then if you want to refine your specific skills, you can go learn specific skills. And this is something I personally agree with and push to my students. Learn broadly with Krav Maga so that you're prepared for the most scenarios for self-defense. And then if you want to specialize in Jiu-Jitsu or Judo or kickboxing or boxing or Muay Thai, by all means, go for it. So we had a very awesome conversation. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions since 2013. So if you want to support this podcast or UTKM in general, you can, of course, train with us locally, because we're allowed to train right now. You can go to urbantacticskm.com and check out how to sign up for our classes if you are in the Metro Vancouver area in Canada. You can, of course, if you're not local, go to utkmblog.com and you can check us out and our ideas and thoughts. And I'm really happy. I'm finally getting some of my students to regularly write. It shows growth in the school, and it's not just me going off on subjects all the time. I want to see the greater Krav Maga and martial arts community contribute. If you would like to get your ideas out there, you're welcome to shoot us an email at info@urbantacticscanada.com. And if you're interested in writing a blog post series, let me know, because this is for all martial arts and Krav Maga practitioners. But you can check us out at utkmblog.com. It's also where I post basic Krav Maga principles as I teach them at UTKM under the KM Principles tab. You can learn a little bit about us and check out at least our basic curriculum. Our student handbook is there. You see how I structured it if you're interested. You can also check out the podcast. All the old podcasts are here on this on this website. Not on Spotify. I only have like the last 10 or so on Spotify and iTunes. So if you want to check out the older episodes on the podcast, you can check out utkmblog.com. And of course, if you just want to support us because, hey, you like our content, it makes it so much easier when we have financial support. You can go to Support Us tab on utkmblog.com and donate whatever you'd like to donate, which is awesome. But of course, If you want something for your money, you can and just check out how I'm teaching, what I'm teaching, at least as a basic right now. You can go to www.utkmu.com and start learning as we teach it. Do not hand out online rankings, so don't ask. It is simply meant as a supplement to my students and to your current Krav Maga training. If you're just interested in seeing how we structure curriculum here or just checking out my approach, you can check that out. It's still a work in progress, but the more students that sign up for it, the quicker I'll get onto it to make it better, as I plan on making that a full inclusive site in the long run as we build stuff up. You can sign up to get a beginner package where you just get your beginner curriculum either annually or monthly, or our novice where you get beginner and all the way up to orange belt curriculum. The advanced curriculum is not available yet, but maybe in the future with some limitations. So check that out at www.utkmu.com. And again, if you want to check out Dennis, you can check out his website at ctkravmagamma.com, and you can shoot him an email at info@ctkravmagamma.com, or give him a call if you're in the Connecticut, North Brantford area, 203-484-2020, and tell him you found out about him from our podcast if you're not already training with him. Oh, and don't forget to check us out at social media, Urban Tactics Krav Maga on Instagram, Urban Tactics KM on Twitter, and Urban Tactics Krav Maga on Facebook. I had to think about that for a second. So yeah, check us out. That's a really great way to support us for free and check out what we're doing. Thank you for the follows in advance. So check this podcast out, episode 92 with Dennis Hill, multiple black belt holder and Krav Maga instructor. Krav Maga is not just a self-defense system. It is a way of life. Warriors Den is a podcast for Kravists, fighters, martial artists, warriors, politicians, and general citizens. Consider this. The society that separates scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. Thucydides. Your host, Jonathan Fader, talks to guests in an open and uncensored format about their fights, their philosophies, and their lives. No topic is taboo, and the conversation may start in one place and end in another. As the quote suggests, you cannot separate the warrior from the politics and the world around them, as a true warrior must be a student in all forms of art and science.
You're listening to The Warrior's Day. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions.
Welcome back. I'm here with Dennis Hill. He operates a martial arts school out in Connecticut and primarily teaching Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu, but you teach all sorts of stuff. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yes. Yeah, John, I do. I've been there 20 years, so there's quite a few things that we do.
Lifelong martial artist, you always diversify. But before we get into that, let's just start with how'd you get into martial arts in the first place?
Oh boy. So probably like a lot of people my age, I'm older. I'm 55. And for me, I started when I was a youngster. So I was really into Bruce Lee. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably in my generation probably were influenced by Bruce Lee back in the day. And that may be how they got into martial arts as well. So for me, I was 7. And that was something that I went to my mom probably didn't know Bruce Lee, what he did. I don't think back then you could even see or find JKD. And it started with Taekwondo. So that's how I got started first.
Yeah, that reminds me, like when I was young, I was like, I want to do martial arts. And I'm not as old as you, but my dad only knew karate. And I just remember telling him, I don't want anything with katas. And he's like, oh, I don't know anything. And this is slightly before the internet, so he didn't really bother to look. So my journey started later on.
Well, for the longest time, like everything was karate, right?
Yeah.
Everything was called just karate. So yeah. So that's how it started. Started with Bruce Lee and just went from there.
Yeah. Now you said you started with Taekwondo. Back then, how was the Taekwondo program? Because I know nowadays it's not what they once were. Was it more like hardcore, like we would imagine in the 60s, 70s, 80s?
I mean, I have not been in a Taekwondo school in, I mean, forever, but back
Yeah.
then it was, oh, let me think back. I mean, I have recollections. First of all, everyone looked like giants. Like when I
Yeah.
think I was a little kid, and I just remember that it seemed like it was a lot of sparring, a lot of heavy bag hitting. I really don't remember. I don't really remember seeing too much focus on kata, but I could be wrong. I mean, my
Mm.
memory could be fading. But one thing I do remember, which I think is very different these days, is it was all guys. I mean, I
Yeah.
just remember men. I don't remember tough. Always remind me of just tough guys,
Mm.
but nice guys. That was another thing that I found. My father passed away when I was young, so I was definitely a young kid looking for role models,
Mm.
male role models. And I did find that in martial arts, but it was a very small kids program. I remember Mr. Lee used to come and train with us and give us things to work on. And then I always remember him going and working with the adults.
Mm.
I don't know nowadays if I would say, I mean, I could be wrong, Jonathan, but I think Taekwondo, I think most of the schools probably have a lot more kids than they do
Yeah. Yeah, up here it's like that. I don't know many adults that do Taekwondo. It's all
Mm,
kids for the most part.
yeah.
And I would imagine for karate, it's similar, though there's a lot of adults. Like there's the strong Kyokushin community up where I am,
Mm,
because Richmond is one of the cities here, and it had one of the oldest Japanese communities outside of Japan. So they have strong kendo, judo, and old school, Okinawan Kyokushin karate. So those communities are pretty developed here. So they tend to have the adults, but the traditional or the more modern, like Olympic style points style stuff, which I despise, that
mm,
attracts all the kids. Probably for the reason that it's got a path to the Olympics and there's a sports component, even if most of us think it's not real fighting anymore.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was interesting because Mr. Lee then, I don't even know his first name. All I
Yeah.
remember was Mr. Lee, but I do remember when he, the message that I remember was that, oh, Mr. Lee is going back to Korea.
Mm.
And when he then went to Korea, the school ended up closing. So
Mm.
I ended up taking some time off until we found another school. And I remember then getting into Tong Sudo, which was another Korean martial art. And there I remember as I was older, I remember that like lots of forms, lots of going down the mats with your kicks, your punches, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've trained some students with from that style before they came over to check Krav Maga, because it's one of those styles that's trying to modernize, and they're teaching self defense. And I think maybe they got offended with some of the stuff I was saying. I'm like, if you make it too artsy, it's not self defense anymore, guys. So you
Yeah.
did switch Taekwondo, Tang Do. What else? What's the next step for you?
Um, then I start like one of the things I noticed with the Korean arts, very good with kicking,
Mm.
for sure, right? Korean arts are usually known for kicking.
Yeah.
My buddies and I then wanted to get a little bit more with hands. And I think back then Kempo was really the
Mm.
thing that was known. So
Yeah.
we started to get involved with Kempo. So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. And that was the next thing that I started to kind of train in. But it seemed pretty similar. And I spent years doing that. It seemed pretty similar, but I did like the fact that it had more hands than
Yeah.
kicking. But it's trying to balance out. I guess like back in the day, I was always interested in self-defense and always trying to fill gaps,
Mm.
where I thought I needed it. And one thing was interesting. We had a Russian guy that used to train there, and he was a boxer from Russia. But I mean,
Mm.
he just like was unbelievable. I mean, The boxing was very different, so
Yeah.
you get another taste of another type of, back then, I don't think most people would have called boxing martial arts,
Yeah.
that boxing's boxing, martial arts, more people looked at it as an Eastern type of thing.
Mm. Yeah, it's I mean, if you got into it, because Bruce Lee, a lot of people, know or don't know that he said if you something along the lines like if you get a couple months of boxing, couple months of wrestling, couple months of something else, you'll probably be able to beat most people on the street just by the fact that you can start doing stuff the other person isn't familiar with, and if they're familiar with one, you switch to the other, and you can overwhelm people quite
Sure.
quickly. So you obviously went down that route sort of mentality rather than the people who wanted to just copy exactly what he was doing, because you got a lot of division between the two sort of mentalities of people that followed Bruce.
Yeah, I have to tell you something funny. You just made me have a one of the gentlemen that used to train at our school. He came. His name is Billy, and Billy was from boxing and wrestling, and he was funny because he goes, I wrestle the boxers and then I box the wrestlers.
Yeah.
So he was always then like, yeah, having both, it would, I can pretty much use those skill sets against the other. So
Yeah. So then, what was after that in your development?
Then this gentleman, Alex, the boxer, his name, Alex, if you're ever listening to this, my friend, Alex Kuzminov, he
Yeah.
then started getting into more Aikido, he wanted to see things that were a little bit different. And then I started training in that. And that also led me to judo, where I found, and that's why I would say I found like a true passion. I always loved my martial arts. They were all just fantastic parts of my development. I would say that it came when we were training in Aikido. My instructor also, his instructor was a Korean instructor, so it was Hapkido. It was, I would say more, he always marketed it as Aikido, but I think it was more of a blend. And then his son did judo. So that's where I got involved. And then when I got into judo, I was like, wow, this is tough stuff.
Yeah.
This is really like tough stuff. And then that was a really, I say, powerful point in my training. I really, really loved training.
Yeah. And you're black belt, I imagine now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you stuck with it. You didn't get scared off.
Well, Jonathan, what's funny back then? I don't know if you were cross training, but I remember back then, like cross training was like taboo. And I got into like a lot of like, it left a bad taste in my instructor's mouth when I was cross training and stuff.
Yeah.
So much that I had to end up leaving the school. And that's just kind of the way it was. Nowadays, I just don't really see. I mean, there's still some things. It depends. Like, you have to definitely, see the situation when it comes to cross training. But back then, I don't know if you remember, it's like you just stuck with the system and you just didn't do that.
Yeah, no, I'm a little young for that. Although, I've experienced a little bit of that. But I encourage my students train everywhere you can. I mean, I tell my students don't necessarily train everything, because if you put too much time into something that the muscle memories conflict with what you're already doing, it might be a bad idea. But other than that, I'm like, cross train. But I know pre-internet, it was really common for that to happen, the ego, because what if you just dedicated your whole life to one style and your student found out it's not so great anymore because someone else figured something else out? and I don't think that's specific to the martial arts world. That was just the human world. Sure. Everyone didn't want to be proven wrong in their little bubbles, so they would, keep people under their thumbs.
Very true. Very, very true. So, yeah, that's where I would say that was definitely a passion and a love that I found.
Yeah. I've dabbled in judo. I teach a little bit of judo. It is so hard hitting, and you got to commit a lot of energy to doing judo. It's but one of my instructors is a judo black belt as well, so I often get them to manage the nuances of the footwork if they want to do the judo way.
Well, it's funny. Our coach used to say that people would say, "Oh, judo, the gentle way." Or,
Yeah.
you say anyone who thinks judo is gentle is going to get smashed.
Yeah, out of their minds. Yeah.
All.
So from
Nowadays,
judo,
judo is pretty much dead here in
yeah,
the States. It's pretty much Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just taking over.
yeah, the impacts of judo is quite intimidating. It's there are very competitive judo feeder programs where I am, and there is the Vancouver police. They use judo as their primary system. They have a feeder program as well. But you're right, the jiu-jitsu is a lot more appealing to the average person or the smaller person. So I guess that you obviously, if you're teaching jiu-jitsu, you got into jiu-jitsu at some point then.
I did. And you know what's interesting? Back in the judo days, I remember when we would get people that they liked, in judo, the groundwork is called newaza. They like the newaza. When you're new, it doesn't beat up your body too much. The throws are hard to do, and it takes a bit of a beating on your body, wear and tear. But I remember back in the day, we're like, well, sometimes with new people, why not just let's teach them newaza and let's not really maybe put the throws in right away. But our coach was like, that's just not how it's taught. That's just not the way it's taught. The throws. Well, actually, let me mention this, Jonathan. I felt when I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I felt very blessed because our coach, his name is Sid Kelly. So anyways, just to mention, like when that whole relationship of cross training, I basically then just stayed with my judo coach, which I met. There's a whole story behind that. And me and my friends, we stayed with Sid and we were training judo. We just loved it. But he came from Great Britain, and he always taught, his classes were always more standing ground, randori, and then if you're preparing for tournament, shiai. But it was always both. I clearly started to remember then as I got more involved with the judo community, a lot of judokas, they mostly focused on the stand-up and their groundwork was very limited. But I felt blessed because then when we were doing jiu-jitsu, you're like, well, a lot of this is stuff that we do in judo as well. Not all of it. The guard work is very much more intricate, but there's a lot, obviously the BJJ came from judo. So
Yeah.
you're looking at chokes and arm bars and things like that. So anyways, that was a blessing.
Yeah. So what rank in jiu-jitsu are you now? Like what year did you start that in judo and jiu-jitsu, just to give some context?
Judo was first. Just to give you a background with the grappling, judo was first. Then I got into sambo, Russian wrestling.
But what years, just so I know, if you remember?
But I started to get into sambo. I've had my school now for 20 years, so celebrated 20 years. When I opened my school, I'll share a funny story with you. When I opened my school, my wife was working as an underwriter. It's her background, very much a numbers person. And she had some pictures on her desk and of me just doing, just martial art pictures. And let me think of her. I can't think of her name right now, but one of her employees was looking at it and said, "Oh, that's interesting. Is that your husband?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's really like fanatical about martial arts. She's like, "Oh, I wonder if he'd want to meet my dad. He's here from Russia now. And he's a wrestling coach from Russia." And my wife was like, "Oh yeah, he'll definitely want to talk to him." So she ended up getting his information. And I remember contacting him. His name is Joseph Vigdorchik, great guy. And Joseph, I called him and we were set a date to meet at a Dunkin' Donuts. And I remember saying to Joseph, I was like, Joseph, just so like, what do you look like? Just so I know, when I walk in. He goes, I mean, I'm gonna do a bad impression of a Russian accent. But he goes, I will be the one that looks like a wrestler. And it started an 8-year relationship where Joseph then came and taught for us for 8 years. And I started learning, just getting exposed to things that were Russian. And actually that's where the first time I even got into kettlebells. And that's another thing that we do at our gym, which is I just love kettlebell training.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, that then, as far as like then how that bridged to jiu-jitsu. So I started getting it. I guess it was like you start hearing more and more about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, where it was something that, of course, I was interested in to see what's the difference. Like, how does this compare to what I already know? And I would say that I probably wouldn't have pursued it as much if it wasn't for the climate that was changing with customers. What I mean by that is we were, running a business. You are certainly looking to evolve and change and adapt to what consumer tastes and preferences start to change and what they ask for, what they're looking for. And I very clearly remember when people would call and they just wanted to know if we did Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And if I was talking to them, well, we do judo, we do, and they're okay, thank you. And they pretty much didn't even want to talk to you. They just were looking for Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They didn't want to hear about judo. They didn't want to hear about any other grappling style, sambo or wrestling, or it was Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I was like, maybe I need to look into this a little bit more. So I started then just bringing in people for seminars. And then I was like, well, let's take this a step further and let's then put on a white belt. Let's look for an instructor and let's see, how this could be implemented into our school. So back then, and we're looking at, so I am, as a matter of fact, the other day it was funny because I was looking to see, I just celebrated when I got my black belt. So that was back in 2013. Yeah. Then 2016, I got my first degree. So, so this goes back even further. So looking then there was nobody really teaching jiu-jitsu. Now it's now you
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
But I started just going and meeting instructors and trying to see who will be a fit for us. I mean, we have a certain culture, we have a certain way about ourselves. And I just wanted to make sure that the instructor that I was linking with would be a good fit. So then I met Luigi Mondelli. Luigi Mondelli is an amazing guy. He is from Rio. He ended up relocating in Connecticut. And I set up a time to meet with him. And that would have been, I would say, other than seminars, that would have been my first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. And we just hit it off. He's a great guy. And it was like, okay, I brought him in to teach on Saturdays. And then I would go to his school and I would go, I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. I went to, if I remember correctly, and then he would teach. So then he brought me from my white belt to, brought me through my blue, purple, brown, black. So he's still my instructor today. I mean, he runs the federation, and Yeah, so that's kind of how that started. But Jonathan, I'm not sure. I guess eventually I would have done it because I mean, look at the popularity of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now. It's global. I'm
Yeah.
sure there would have been a point that I would have wanted to get into it, but I don't think I would have gotten into it when I did if it wasn't also like a business decision because that's
Yeah.
what I saw people were asking for. And therefore, from a business perspective, I got to look into this and see what we can do.
Yeah.
So that's how that took place.
Yeah, I know for sure. It's like I started with Krav Maga primarily, and realized there's a gap in the knowledge base from most Krav Maga guys, which is the grappling aspect. And started after I bumped into a black belt in a bar at the UFC. He's like, "Hey, school's around the corner." I started there. I'm now somewhere else, but I'm at the tail end of my purple belt now, like 8 years later.
Oh, awesome!
But it's when you cross train, it just changes your perspective. Like me doing jujitsu and dabbling in other stuff, I've tweaked my Krav Maga program.
It's
just from
gotta
cross training,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I found like too with Kali. I mean, I love Filipino martial arts, and when it comes to impact weapons and blades, I mean, there's no doubt that the Filipino martial arts has affected my weapon work. I mean, how can it not?
Yeah.
Same, like how does jujitsu, when you start learning it, how does it not cross over and cross pollinate into your Krav Maga?
Yeah. Now, with that being said, when did the Krav Maga enter the picture?
Krav Maga, it started pretty early when I opened the school. Because what I did, I I had I had I opened up my school when I first started and had other instructors that I was friends with come in and train so that we would train together. And I had people from different styles that would come in. And one of the guys that came in was Krav Maga. So that's how I first started to get into Krav Maga training. And at first I wasn't really that much into it. I really just it was good to cross train, but I guess at that point I was just into what I was doing, but I did like seeing different things that it was good. I think we all the people that were part of that, we all benefited from each other. So that was good.
Yeah. Now, which organization did you sort of get involved with? Because I know that's a different thing for different people with this organization, that organization.
Yeah. Well, I think that happened for me too. And I don't want to say names and stuff like that because it took a while. And I belong to a few organizations, and I just had to feel like what was a good fit. And part of it was, I don't know what your background was with Krav Maga and how, I think you're independent if I'm not mistaken.
I am independent now, though I am technically loosely affiliated with a couple organizations.
Yeah, and no, I understand that. I found that it was also like I wanted to just have someone even that was close to me. And in the beginning, it was hard because you had to fly people in, and it was a ton of money. And I also found in the beginning that the curriculum, some of it seemed a little like, how is this even structured? It seemed a little bit like it's just kind of put together, but I don't see themes at all. And I found that a little frustrating. I remember if sometimes they were trying to change things and they would be like, well, we're going to do a straight arm bar in yellow belt. And you're like, a straight arm bar? It just seems like that's a lot for somebody. But I think what they were probably doing is maybe getting caught up in the MMA, the MMA thing. And they were just trying to, adapt. So I enjoyed everybody that I trained with. I enjoyed all of it. And right now, I just have a loose affiliation. I do love Alan Cohen and his system. And when I found that, I was like, wow, he's got a very, very theme-based system. for instance, your yellow belt, your orange belt, it's all self-defense skills. Green belt is your grappling. Your blue belt is your weapons, predominantly like blades, and then it goes to firearms. And it's like, I've never seen prior to that how it was put together. And that is where I am now.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I think a lot of us come to that. The Israelis, as great as they are, they don't like managing things. They really don't. That when you see how the global ones are structured, it's like, I'll teach you here's an instructor program, go. And I'm like, can't run a school off of that. And, that's a big reason why I think there's a quality control issue, particularly in North America. I like my program. It took me quite a while to come to sort of what techniques I want where, because I don't want a bloated one with too many techniques, because that defeats the simplicity thing. But I also need to cover all the bases. So like for me, like I came to white belt is your basics, 360 knife defense, straight line, how to move, how to think, punch, kick, and some basic chokes. And I really focused on conceptual ideas. And then if you can get your yellow belt, yellow and orange, I'm focusing on the throws, the controls, like the judo, jiu-jitsu aspects, groundwork, more advancing of the basic concepts. And then green belt up, I start introducing the offensive weapons, because I don't think it's necessarily self-defense at that point. In a lot of times it's more job oriented, so policing, military application. Organization I originally started with had like something like 1,500 techniques. I'm like, that's too much. I think I'm down to like 300 or so, and I just repeat. And if you want to learn other stuff, go cross train. And I think
that's an interesting thing, Jonathan, because that's what I do too. Is I don't know. Like my feeling is that Krav Maga is supposed to be a system of self-defense where if it gets too complex, I'm not sure if that's going to serve people that are coming in for self-defense. I struggle with this even with my staff sometimes, because I find that most people, if they're coming into Krav Maga and you're like, why is someone coming into Krav Maga, is that they want to learn self-defense. I mean, that's basically what they want to do. And I think they come in with preconceived ideas.
Boy, do they.
Right? Yeah, right? They do. So it's got to be something that's pretty simple for them to learn. And the hard part, too, with Krav Maga is I think most people think of it as a short-term study. I think in the beginning, most people view it that way.
How long till I'm an instructor, right?
But there's like the belt system that they're going through. Yeah. And then I start to find as they progress through their Krav Maga, and let's say that they're like, wow, I really like the striking, I enjoy this. Then I start to find they'll cross-train in Muay Thai, so they'll cross-train in our Muay Thai program. Or if let's say we're doing a rotation on edged weapons, and they kind of like that, they'll start cross-training in Kali. Or if they like the grappling, all of a sudden, bam, next thing you know, they're in a jiu-jitsu class. So I find that I like to give our students I look at Krav Maga as like, it's the first place that people often come in our school. They're always a little nervous, right? They're kind of nervous to come in. And it's a great system for somebody to come into and for somebody to grow in if they want something that's broad, but maybe not too deep, but it's broad. I mean, there's a lot you got to learn. And you got to learn your punching, your blocking, your blades, your sticks, your firearms, all of that, your grappling. But it doesn't run too deep in any of those things. And that's why I like having the other martial arts, so that if you find that you're connected to this type of training, keep coming to Krav Maga. But if you like, let's say grappling, because that's a big one. If you enjoy the grappling, then hey, cross-train in jiu-jitsu. And right now I see a lot of friends in Krav Maga. That's a big one that they're cross-training in, is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Everybody, I mean, jiu-jitsu is just.
Yeah. No, it's So you came from a very rich, deep martial arts background before you came into Krav Maga. And it's actually interesting because a lot of people with that kind of background, because like you just said, that Krav Maga is very broad, but not necessarily deep. And it's very
I don't want to
easy.
offend anybody. I don't want to say that deep, but I would say, I mean,
you're right. It's a lower level of skill development when compared to a boxer or a wrestler.
Yep.
So that's what I was getting to. It's very easy for someone with your background to be dismissive of Krav Maga. And I see MMA guys dismissive of it. And I see, Jiu-Jitsu guys dismissive of it. And it's like, I don't think you understand like what it is, because I can go in the news and find black belts of all sorts of styles who were phenomenal MMA guys who got killed in the street because they really didn't understand self-defense. So why did you not dismiss it, given your background from that? You know what I'm saying?
Let me, before I give you some details on that, let me just share something. I had a long-time martial art friend stop in the other day. I haven't seen him in a while, and his name is David. And he came in, and I was like, David, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. And he's like, how's it going with the school and all of this? And then the last thing he said, he goes, why Krav Maga? Why did you? And, because he's like, why did you even go to Krav Maga? So see, like a lot of my friends, like sometimes they're like, why did you do that? I started to look into Krav Maga. Like I said, in the beginning, I wasn't interested in it. It just like, I'm like, it's just not something that I'm really interested in doing. I'm not sure if it's going to add value to what I already do. But the more that I started to look into it, I was like, this is going to be a system that is going to give a person who wants to come in for self-defense, it's going to give them a very good structure for that. And I think that the Israeli system is going to be able to give people what they want for self-defense. So let me explain that a little bit. I'll tell you another story. One of my BJJ guys, and he comes and cross trains with us. He loves judo. He does Krav Maga, he does Kali, and he's. I was talking to him the other day. His name is Tommy. Oh, last week or 2 weeks ago, I was chatting with him, and he said, "You know what, Dennis?" He goes, "I have to tell you something funny." He goes, "I got involved with Jiu-Jitsu because I just wanted to do self-defense. I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn self-defense skills. That's why I started looking at it." And he goes, "I hear Jiu-Jitsu. I guess then I should go to Jiu-Jitsu." And he goes, "Do you know the first lesson, the first thing that they were teaching in class was De La Hiva guard?" And I was going out of there going, how is De La Hiva going to help me in a street encounter? And see, he was like, I don't think this is going to be something that maybe I should do. It doesn't seem to make sense to me, but the rolling and all that is a lot of fun. So he ended up sticking with it. But then he started coming, when he found out about our school at Krav Maga, he started to come to our school to train. And he also then is starting to do the jiu-jitsu and the judo at our school as well. So, but that's a funny thing. So why did I start getting into Krav Maga? Again, because I think it's got, my martial art friends will ask me a lot, like, why? Because it has all the systems that I've been exposed to. I've not seen one that has a better one that is for the person coming in that wants to learn self-defense. Now, I had a long history with Hapkido as well. If you ever took a Hapkido class, it covers a lot of stuff that you'll see in Krav Maga, plus more. However, the way it's structured to teach it, it should look towards Krav Maga and how to break it down for that person that wants self-defense. The way that they address things up front that a new student would do, I would say, I think Krav Maga has got the upper hand here. let's talk about this too. There's a big thing in jujitsu as far as jujitsu being like something you learn for self-defense.
Mm.
I don't know, Jonathan, what do you think about that? I
Oh,
mean,
I can say a lot about that.
I don't know. Like
Well, the example
we're gonna
for
do
the
Diva.
my it's so being a martial arts expert, no matter what the style, even if you yourself are quite capable of handling yourself in a self-defense situation, that doesn't mean you're qualified to teach for self-defense just because you're some world champion. And
That's
a
a
big
very good point.
yeah, and a big difference for me is this is all martial arts. We all know that if 10,000 people walk in the door, one's going to be the black belt skill level. And that black belt is going to be the one who can be like, yeah, sure, I can handle most things. Yet I can, as I said, I can still find stories of black belts getting killed because they didn't understand how a firearm works or something like that.
Or stabbed, right?
And so they're approaching it from the wrong thing is you can't just teach a technique because you think it's good. The example I give, if we go into a women's self-defense BJJ seminar, half these people have never done jiu-jitsu at all or grappling. And we're saying, in theory, it's a good idea that I teach them a triangle from the guard. Why? Because they are being attacked. They're probably being raped. They're going to be able to do this technique. And then I say, oh, hold on a second. Listen, I'm a purple belt. And against anyone even remotely bigger than me, I have a bad knee. I can barely do triangles. I know how to do them technically. So this is a technique you're teaching that in order to be proficient at it, you need years and years of training. How is that helpful in self-defense? You're just doing it wrong. No, I'm not. You are not being objectively practical. I cannot use techniques that take decades to master and use them in a self-defense system. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Well,
now, if someone asked me in my class, hey, could you show me a triangle? I'll quickly show them. And I said, now go do jujitsu. It's technically it's a great technique, but and a high percentage in competition. But that 100-pound woman who's about to get raped is not doing a fucking triangle on anyone because the pressure.
And that guy's 250.
Yeah.
Up and possibly just slam her.
It's very common for people just to pick up and slam. And, I've had this conversation with many grapplers and I'm like, listen, you're not teaching self-defense. Can you please stop? Of course, they think I'm nuts. It's like, where's your 5 black belts and this and that? I'm like, you're going to get someone killed, man. Like, it's just not right.
I mean, self-defense goes so deep. Yesterday, I was listening to, did you ever hear of Andrew Branca?
No.
He's an attorney. He's probably in the US. He's probably the self-defense attorney. And he talks a lot. I love the guy. His books, he does seminars and things like that. But he talks about just the law of self-defense. And that was the name of his book, The Law of Self-Defense. And anyways, I always like to do that. We have a gentleman too at our school. He's a prosecutor and he did a workshop for us on the law of self-defense. And there's a lot that I think people don't understand, even if you're a martial artist or like I know you do gun training and firearms training, me too, that people really need to learn about self-defense. So that's one aspect, the law of self-defense. And then what you're talking about is like even technical skills with self-defense. Let me give you a call that I had not too long ago. And I was debating with my wife, like, what do I do with this? And Jonathan, you'll like this. Hopefully your listeners will appreciate this because a lot of them, if they're school owners, get this type of call. Gentleman calls and he wants to learn self-defense. So he's asking about jiu-jitsu. And so get a little bit of information about him. And I was like, oh boy. I was like, all right, here's a rotation we're working on in jiu-jitsu. Now we have fundamental classes. We have classes where you mostly roll, competition class. But, we'd bring them into a class where we're working on spider guard and lassos. And I'm like, how is this guy, if I bring him in and he wants to learn self-defense, is this guy gonna think that this is self-defense training? And I was saying to my wife, I was talking to my instructors, I'm like, I got to get this guy to come into Krav Maga. But sometimes it's hard because people say, well, I want to do jiu-jitsu. That's what they want to do. If you ask them to do something else, it becomes challenging. So that is something where I would rather have that potential student come through Krav Maga And then if he starts enjoying grappling and stuff, I can talk to him a little bit more, why the BJJ would be helpful in some situations, talk to him more and just start to lay out how we do things at the school and what programs would most likely benefit you best based on your goals.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? If he came into a class and was doing spider guard?
Yeah, well, I think they'd be overwhelmed a lot of the time.
Yeah, but do you think you have self-defense training?
No, not at all. Yeah.
So,
and don't get me wrong, there's lots, like, for example, an open half guard like Z guard, I teach in self-defense because that's much more practical in, a raging, like they're trying to get on top of you situation where you can manage it. And so knowing like which aspects of jiu-jitsu, like my Krav Maga is so much better for doing jiu-jitsu and judo and wrestling.
oh, for sure.
But I find people, they don't know how to take the techniques and correctly insert them into it and what not to teach. Cause it's like, listen, that's too technical or that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest things I think Krav Maga instructors, whenever they learn something new, it's like, oh, I'm going to teach this. And, I'll learn something new. Like I was thinking about, should I put heel hooks in my program? Cause they're very effective. And I had to think, I haven't put it in yet, and I think I'm going to put it in at the higher levels. What scenarios that are self-defense oriented where this would be appropriate? And I had to think about it. And the thing I came up with, sometimes we end up in a situation where we're on the ground, on our back, and someone tries to stomp. They don't really understand. They try to step over your hips and stomp on your head, and they expose that single leg. I'm like, there, single leg sweep, heel hook. Right? But it's a very specific situation, and it wouldn't just be a general, here's a heel hook, you need to do them all the time, because that doesn't make any sense.
Yep. Here's an interesting thing that happened in Connecticut. It happened years ago, but it sticks in your mind because it really was a big thing when it happened. On the highway, there's a car or there's a vehicle that was pulled over. And the gentleman then was resisting, and he ended up just attacking this guy's, the state trooper's legs. He ended up damaging and causing major damage to the leg. So other departments were responding, and this guy was, he was military. I believe he was military. Somehow I think this guy was studying Sambo, and he started just attacking all these officers' legs and causing major damage to them. And one of the officers was a gentleman that I didn't know personally, but it was a friend of a friend. So my friend was telling me the story. He was a karate black belt, and he goes, this guy grabbed my leg. I had no idea what he was doing. Next thing I know, I just had searing pain in my knee. And it was just, right there. That sometimes is even good for maybe not offensive, but at least defensive skills. Yeah. But it's kind of a specialty, if you will. I mean, leg locking and stuff like that is probably not what most people think of as far as learning it for self-defense. But in that, boy, that would have certainly helped if people knew how to defend that a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, like knowing, so that's like when I actually was just listening to Hicks and Gracie on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. And, oh, wait, not on, was it Joe Rogan or Jocko? I think I heard him on Jocko's.
I think it was on both. I briefly listened to the Jocko one too, but it's just, he's telling the story of how like Helio came up with what he did. And it's and just changing things. And if no one's ever seen anything, they don't know how to deal with it. And so, that to me, the Krav Maga, the generalist aspect is why it's so important, because you have no idea what someone's going to come at you with. And we don't need to be specialists. If you want to be a specialist, you go train that thing. But people will mock you, like, you're not developing the good skill sets. You're not going to be as good a boxer. It's like, of course not, because I need to be ready for anything. I need to know how to defend against anything. And I don't need to beat him in a fight. I need to stop him for 5-10 seconds so that I can escape. And I think that's a big component, of an MMA, because I get young, fit guys come in once in a while. They're just so gifted. They're bored with Krav Maga in a very short amount of time, because I get a wide variety of people, small women and girls, big guys. And the athletic guys, they rarely stay, because what they're really looking for is that athletic output to tire themselves out, and they're not necessarily getting, when say if they have good kickboxing skills and during sparring and they're just messing everyone up, and I'm like, hey, just chill, work on your defense. And they're like I want to push myself. I'm like, I don't, you need something with competition. You still do Krav Maga, but you need something with competition. Now I'm just teaching Krav Maga right now, so I can't feed them into any other programs, but it's really hard with some of these guys to make people realize why it's important.
Yeah.
You'll get old eventually, dude. You don't have your athletic skill anymore. What are you going to do?
I feel that now. I have that. It's funny because a couple of things. One was when you said that you're getting old. Like I remember Hickson in that podcast making a comment that right now he's about 5% of what he used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's more than 5% of what he used to be. But I mean, back in the day, I mean, he was the man. And now I'm sure he feels his age and stuff like we all do. I mean, I feel it at 55 now. The other thing is, it's very interesting how CrossFit at least I know just from my gym, I get so many people that did CrossFit coming into Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
They don't come to Krav Maga because I think you had mentioned, for the same reasons you had mentioned, they generally will come into BJJ because they like the push in Jiu-Jitsu when they're rolling, and they like the competition. So we get a lot of CrossFitters. Just have a new guy that just joined, Jason, and that's his background, CrossFit. And he's like, I'm getting bored with CrossFit. It's just
I wonder why.
Yeah. CrossFit is CrossFitters seem to really take to Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, they're already in shape, which is great. They're already in shape. They got to learn the technical skills.
Yeah.
But I have to share something else with you. And you were saying that prior to COVID, like COVID was just horrible. It shut everything, horrible for everybody.
And you're in a very aggressive shutdown state, right?
Yep, we are. And we always would like to go to a boxing gym. So there's a boxing gym, a Blue Boy Boxing. So we generally will go once a month there. And there's no doubt we go there to box, and we go there to learn boxing. But like you were saying, if you're going to box a boxer, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
They're going to mess you up if you play the
boxer.
Yeah. There's a reason Mayweather never took a fight outside of boxing. He's like, nope.
Exactly. I have a question for you, Jonathan.
Sure, yeah.
Think about Hickson. I'm not going to be able to say it verbatim, but I found it interesting how the split with Jiu-Jitsu, where you see a lot of more people going towards the competitive side and more people maybe doing the self-defense. And he said in there that his Jiu-Jitsu, or what he saw as the Gracie, when the Gracie started it, is that it was where you certainly had self-defense skills, because you'll see some of their older videos, they do blade work and stuff like that. Their self-defense skills and being a fighter, like you did the live practice, you did that. And he said, nowadays, what I see more is you might have people that are very good fighters in Jiu-Jitsu, but they lack self-defense skills. Or you might see systems that are very good at self-defense, but they lack fighting skills. When he said that, I was like, I think that sometimes you could see that division and that trend happening. And I do see that with like Krav Maga, that's sometimes where Krav Maga gets people will comment about that, about, Krav Maga. Like if you're not really doing live practice, that's kind of a little bit of a flaw with Krav Maga. But I think most people don't realize that is part of Krav Maga, or is part of the Israeli system. But most people sometimes don't get there, because you generally find that a lot of people that are attracted to Krav Maga really get scared when you're starting to do any sort of like live practice.
Mm.
So I thought that was interesting with his comment.
He's not wrong. But I all respect to Hickson. I find the Gracies are quite narrow-minded sometimes about a lot of things. But on that thing, he is pretty correct. And it's really all to do with how you train. So, like I've never taken like a Gracie's combative thing per se, but I've seen what they do. And as a Krav guy, I don't like it. I find they're too technical. And again, the things they're teaching are not quick to learn. They require, and they'll be like, oh, look, it works. It's like, dude, you're Hickson Gracie. Of course it's going to work. They're thinking inside their heads too much about themselves and what they can do and not enough about what other people can do. And they don't train the mental enough. Now, I know Hickson trains mental a lot more than the other ones, but as a general rule, the Gracie combatants don't teach people to overcome fear, which is a huge component of the way Krav is taught in Israel. Now, if you go with the soldiers, the special force guys, there's only a couple units in the IDF that have the mental, physical, and technical fighting skills. It's a myth that the IDF says special soldiers have very high level technical fighting skills, because they don't. Because I've seen it myself where they go up against a pro fighter and get taken apart. They just lack the skills. But when you put people in combat zones, it's life or death. Does the fighter have the skills for that? And unfortunately, like I like to think I've fixed this issue with my curriculum. It's hard to say, but you have to develop a way where I'm developing their overcoming fear. You have to put them in sparring, whether they like it or not, controlled, of course. Yeah. You have to put them in stress testing. That's the true to Krav Maga. But you need, if you have a civilian school, you're not teaching to elite guys who are physically fit. You need to develop their technical skill. And so what a lot of people do is they go take their 4-day Krav Maga course from a more military-oriented guy, and then they open up a civilian school, and they have no clue how to develop the technical. Or they come from a martial arts background, and they take the 4-day course, which I'm very against this in Krav Maga. They need to stop with these short courses for instructorship. It doesn't, as you know, you put back on your white belt. It doesn't. You want to go with this organization, put back on your white belt, train with them for a few years, understand their system, then think about instructorship. I've had people come to me like, I want to be an instructor. I'm like, 3 to 4 years, and I'm still not letting you open up a school under my name. You can teach for me, but you're not opening up a school. That part the Gracies got right. They developed all their black belts, said, hey, you go to that city, you go to that city, you go to that city. And by the time, and then they got the schools sort of established, then they started making it popular. So there were already established student bases at those schools. Mm-hmm. That part they did brilliantly, and it's the part that the Krav Maga world failed. They just sent everyone out who's not qualified, and the Israelis very much don't want to not be in Israel. And it's created some schools with traditional martial arts background. They're great at developing technique, but they suck at the mind, and they don't spar. I'm like, I'm sorry, you have to, right? You have to.
It's interesting because you and I have spoken about this before, where I think Krav Maga is losing ground to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a lot of respects. And I think right now, I know here where I am, the push for police is to train Jiu-Jitsu, but it's got to be a Jiu-Jitsu where like you're not going to have an officer coming in where you're like, okay, guys, we're going to learn how to pull guard. I mean, who's going to pull guard out on the street? It's got to be a jiu-jitsu where it also has a combative component to it. And that's where I think that Krav Maga is much better as far as developing that. But I do think jiu-jitsu gives that fighting ability. Like, I have great instructors at my school. One of my instructors, his name is Mike Wolf, is a police officer. He's on SWAT, and he says something which I think is very interesting. He's like, grappling is the nucleus of fighting. It's like for police officers, it's like you get into those entanglements, and it's like the better you are at being able to control somebody and not strike them, to be able to just get them down, put them in cuffs, right? That's what needs to be done. grappling is a huge asset, and everything else then circles around the grappling. So very, very open-minded gentleman. He loves many martial arts, but I would say for Mike, like jiu-jitsu is a big thing that he just loves. And I can see that push with police officers more going with jiu-jitsu than with Krav Maga. And I think the grappling, why they're doing it. Because if I got to get a hold of this guy, I need to grapple. I need to not hit him, not, just be able to control him. And if I need him in cuffs, to get him in cuffs. So I don't know. Do you see that differently? I love both arts, but I've seen the trend where Krav Maga is not as popular as it once was. And I can see jiu-jitsu just being, to me, jiu-jitsu right now is the most popular art on the planet.
For sure. Now, you're lucky because where I am, Krav Maga was never popular, so it's always an uphill battle.
Oh, really?
And jiu-jitsu is also very popular. Like,
Jonathan, I got to ask you, what martial arts are popular where you are?
Jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu and MMA are the primary ones. And it's this city in particular. It's very left-wing. It's very safe. Okay. To my knowledge, at this point, I'm one of the more successful Krav Maga schools that I'm still around like 10 years later. There were some schools that were around 10 or 15 years, but as rent increased, and more competition came, they fell apart. So I mean, luckily I'm in Canada, so our socialist government handed out a lot of money, so that helped a lot of people, but they're still being silly idiots. But anyways, so the policing question, like if a police officer comes into my white belt program, they're probably going to be like, this isn't what I'm looking for. Okay. When I get them in private, I'm like, listen, I'm going to, because I teach the grappling a little higher up, and most police don't have this time to get to that point. So I will teach the grappling for policing in private lessons right away. And so the reason that the grappling, so the learning curve for grappling is extensive. It's a long time. Yeah. They need to know it for the ability to arrest people. The more you can grapple, the easier it is for you to control and arrest. But you need to come in with it from, I think, a wrestler's mentality where you got to stay on top. You cannot go on the bottom.
Wrestling and judo, no doubt. Like the jiu-jitsu program has to be heavy on the stand-up for sure.
Yeah, and then one of the visions that people have of Krav Maga is that it's heavy on hitting people. Now, from an optics perspective for policing, that's like, nope, we're not doing that. But I'll tell you the story I had is I was teaching Krav Maga. Like I was renting space at a judo gym, and he said, hey, just so you know, on this days, I have these RCMP, the Canadian Federal Police. There's a guy teaching jiu-jitsu to his fellow police officers. And he's a brown belt. Unfortunately, they'd never let me jump in and roll with them, which says to me, that's like, I'm like, guys, you know who I am. You know, I understand police work and military applications. So I think I can. I was just standing there watching with this brown, he's an experienced police officer of, 15, 20 years. What he's teaching, I'm like, man, that's not useful for policing. You're the police officer. And that's the problem is you get these guys who are like, I'm a cop, I know how to do it. And it's like, no, not everyone knows. Again, not everyone understands what to do. Now, an example of 360 defense. I teach cops because they need to know it. Cops get in their head, I can draw my gun and shoot you. I'm like, okay, you want to go on YouTube and find all the videos of all the cops that couldn't draw their firearm because they got overwhelmed and all of a sudden you had to use hand-to-hand combat and then they got stabbed because they couldn't stop that initial attack, create space. And so I was doing a drill with someone recently, and I always tell police officers, bring your duty belt. Hey, I got fake guns. I mean, if you want to bring your unloaded gun, that's a risk on you, but fake guns usually. And I said, okay, well, I drilled the 360 with them. And then I start upping how aggressive I am, how quick. And you start seeing real fast, they can't draw that pistol anymore. Now, what happens if I get into you and I start grabbing, you get a hold of my arm? Great, you're controlling my arm now. Can you shoot me yet? And they're like, how do I let go and shoot you? I'm like, you can't. you have to learn how to grapple me down to the ground. Whatever way you do it, because I know there are ways that are quite successful, but I don't like to teach them unless someone has the physical capabilities to control someone, because a lot of them will end up with someone's face smashing into the ground. For example, if I have them sort of front arm, they're facing me, you can simply push the shoulder down, face goes into the ground. Well, sure, I can teach that to cops, but you know what's going to happen? A large percent of the time, if they don't have the skill, that perp or whatever's face is going to be smashed up, and they're going to be in trouble in court now, especially with the thing. So I think a lot of people teaching this stuff, they don't understand the legal aspect. They don't understand the lack of skill in the police officers. They don't understand where the weapons come in. If you don't know how to integrate your tools and you're teaching grappling, you're telling people a lot of wrong information.
Let me give you something which popped into my head about that. Two things. One is, I mentioned Andrew Branca when he was talking. He said, one of the things, it's a little bit of a side note, but it just I was like, wow, it's like people going for their gun. He said, now as a self-defense attorney, goes, the thing that baffles me is people who want to learn self-defense, a lot of times they go, well, I'll just go and get my pistol permit and my gun is my self-defense. And he's like, most encounters are not deadly force. They're non-deadly force. And a lot of people then get in a situation that's a non-deadly force situation, and they think they're frightened and they use their gun.
Yeah.
You're like, that's going to get you in a lot of trouble with
non-deadly,
you go deadly problem. And the other thing is, I had a very interesting conversation. We went on just, the family went on this, this place called, a place called Hope. They do rehab for predatory birds. It was fascinating, but there's a lot of police officers that volunteer there. And I was talking to one of them, and it was interesting. She was saying how she knew what I did. We were chatting, and she goes, a lot of times civilians think that police officers are they're like expert with firearms. They're hand-to-hand experts. And we were chatting about the training changes that are taking place. And she's like, a lot of times there's that myth that they think police officers just have all these skills, and they don't. Most of them don't, unless they go out and seek the training and do more than what they're required to do.
Yeah.
So just, very interesting, that comment with Andrew. I thought that's true. I see a lot of people that come into my pistol permit classes. They're there for self-defense, but it's like, this is deadly force. What about non-deadly force?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for police,
be excellent for that.
Yeah, I think for police, the mindset has to shift to, and it's like this in a lot of countries, but I think it needs to be in America in particular. I think a big part of the problem in America is their engagement protocols are just creating a lot of these situations that other countries just say, hey, if we just slightly change our engagement protocols, it goes nonviolent a lot easier. But you should only be drawing that thing if you're going to use it, as in they have a gun or a knife and they're charging you. If that's not the case, you shouldn't be drawing it. You should have the hand-to-hand combat skills. Now, they're lacking the skills. That's very clear to everyone who's paying attention and actually understands. So they need the skills. Because they don't have the skills, that's why they're drawing so much in America. In Canada, not to say that they don't really have the skills that much either, but the mentality is really don't draw that thing unless you absolutely have to. There's still a lot of accusations of police shooting people on, and I'm like, no, they charge them with a knife, grow up, like stuff like that. But, and as a civilian, so in Canada, you cannot, there are exceptions to the rule. Like if I go into common law cases, people have used guns in self-defense, but I can't go purchase a firearm for the purpose of self-defense. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with that personally, but that's what it is in Canada. That's the laws here. I teach the course. I'm very well aware of the laws here. Now, in the States, what people have to realize where you're allowed to use it for self-defense is that it's a visual deterrent most of the time. Hey, pick the wrong person. Most predators are going to back out. You don't even need to draw it. Just let them know, listen, I'm armed. I'm the wrong target. That is where majority of confrontations will stop, because they realize, oh, this is not a good target, right? Again, same concept though. If you're going to draw it, are you willing to use it? And a lot of people who buy it for self-defense actually are not. Now, if you drill quick draws and you drill that enough, you might have the muscle memory to draw and shoot and kill the person, but then mentally you're like, shit, I just killed a person. And a lot of people don't understand its tool and how to use it correctly, right?
And just even commenting too, like when you look at the pillars of self-defense, it's interesting when you look at that in most, like in the state laws, that there's 5 pillars that Andrew was going over. He's like, if a prosecutor can just like collapse one of those, your whole claim for self-defense is gone. And it's I encourage my people to learn as much as they can about it. And actually, it's one of the things that for me, I need to get into one of his seminars and just learn even more about that as an instructor. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic, even just deadly versus non-deadly.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way society is going is avoid lethal force at all costs. Yeah. And that you need high enough skill level, especially if it's your job, in order to reduce the chance of you succumbing to fear and panicking and going lethal right away, which is what happens most of the time. Outside of military is different, because if you're in a conflict zone, it's assumed that they're going to shoot to kill. So even though the Geneva idiots who made the Geneva Convention are like, oh, shoot to maim, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, real. They're shooting at me. No, I'm shooting to kill. Grow up. And there is a psychology behind it, like have you ever read the book On Killing? I forgot who wrote it. Yeah. So he discusses in the older wars, most people weren't shooting to kill. Mm-hmm. That's not true anymore, because we've learned how to train people in a way to shoot to kill, to overcome that. Because what's the point of a soldier, like the Krav Maga mentality? They're an immediate threat to life and death now. I need to stop them now. Mm-hmm. And if you're like not willing to kill, mm-hmm. you're not a very effective soldier. Now, you shouldn't be going around killing people intentionally unless they've shown that they're going to cause you harm. But that's the thing about, like, as a civilian, a lot of people don't know if they can, or they don't know if they have it in them. And then the other question is, why are you in situations where that's even on the table most of the time? Something has gone wrong. From a self-defense perspective, often the Krav Maga world loves scenarios. And I think people don't set them up correctly, because my question a lot of time to students is, okay, I'm going to show you how to deal with this, but why are you even in this position? What went wrong to get you to this position? And I don't think enough instructors address that. The person is behind you and attacking you aggressively. Why are they doing that? That's not a normal situation. What enemies did you make? Did you hit on someone's girlfriend in the bar and not realize it, and then you failed to pay attention? Because I've pissed people off in bars before, and I don't have a problem, because I've realized I've really offended someone who's shown some aggression. I go back to my friends and I'm watching them, and I make sure they know I'm watching them so they can't sneak up on me. And that aspect is huge.
We were talking about that the other day too. Like, it gives you like sometimes worst case scenarios, but you're like, the real goal is not to get here at all. You miss a lot if you're here. And it's interesting. I had a flashback when I first even started Krav Maga. One of the things I found a little strange is when we were doing certain groundwork, they would show like, okay, here's how you get out of mount. Here's if they're choking you, or here's how we get out of mount. And I remember thinking, when are they going to show how not to get mounted?
Yeah.
And I remember like, I was like, oh, wait, they're not showing that? It's like, well, how about like, why don't we show how not to get mounted instead of just once you're mounted, how to get out? It's a lot harder to get out of mount than it is to just prevent the mount to begin with. So, but I mean, I think that's like any system. You're going to see things that you like, things that maybe we fill in the gap a little bit here, probably be a little bit better. Yeah. But that was something that I thought was always a little missing from Maga.
Yeah, don't get there. Like the Israelis love the situational thing, right? And I very much agree with the don't let them get you there. Like there's an instructor, a famous instructor, somewhat famous on the island here. Before that, it's like, okay, someone with a strong side control gets you in side control, you're stuck. And he was just like, you have to learn how not to get there because, yeah, of course you're stuck, So you have to train your reflexes how not to get there. Don't let that situation happen. Like, re-guard faster. And since then, my guard has gotten a lot better. People are just like, they have to, even if they get past my guard because they're young, fit, or their skills much better than mine, I make them work for it. And if that was a self-defense situation, my guard's sufficient that I could have kicked them in the face like 3 times by then and got to my feet. But then the application.
Back in the day when I remember probably just learning holds and stuff, because judo is very good at holds, because you could win a match. You can get an ippon from just holdouts. And I remember my judo coach saying that the goal is not obviously to get here, because holds are designed not to get out of. If you're able to put them on 100%, the person you're holding is probably not going to get out. And you could definitely see, like, say you put a judo black belt down and you get someone who's not a black belt but they're experienced, and you say everything's going to go just right and you're going to hold them down, and they know that hold really well, you're probably not going to get out, even the experienced person. You have to be a lot better than the person that's holding you to get out of it. So that goes back to that concept, like, how about let's not get here to begin with? And that's where sometimes I think certain training is not really focused on. It's almost like, if you get in this really bad scenario, here's how you try to get out. And you're like, my training is not to get here. It's, the same idea. Sometimes people say, let's say wrestlers, they'll say, well, they're not good at fighting off their back. They kind of suck at fighting off their back. And my thing is, have you ever tried a wrestler on his back?
Yeah.
You're not going to get him on his back very easily, right? Their training is all how not to get in that position.
Yeah.
And unless you're better at wrestling than that person, you're not going to get that person on their back for sure. Yeah. So that's an interesting thing.
Funnily enough, for arresting people, putting them on their back is not where you want them most of the time. You want them on their stomach, where they love to go, judokins too, or you want them on their side. And that's the thing about the if you get a wrestler, and they don't understand how to put handcuffs on and what the best positions are, you end up teaching people the wrong things, because I don't want people on their back. It's really hard to handcuff someone who's resisting if they're on their back. I don't want them on their back, and so understanding that context and application. Now, I'm assuming you've listened to whatever John Danaher has put out in podcast wise recently. He did a whole bunch of them.
Everybody knows John, right?
Yeah.
He is a huge name in BJJ or martial arts in general.
Yeah.
I don't keep up with him, specifically. So if you're like, what, I know he's put some, I do know the whole thing about they went to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. And, now they're in Texas and they split. Yeah. The drama.
It's kind of weird. Like, wait, what is this really a split? I all of that stuff. I know that he put together, one of my students grabbed it, but I haven't seen it myself. Floor, what does he call it? Feet to floor.
Yeah,
together, from what I understand, judo type takedowns that are good for a BJJ person. Yeah. But what were you referring to, John?
Well, so basically, why he's so successful as a coach is because he understands combat as a holistic thing. He understands the human mind as it pertains to combat. He's not just teaching techniques. He's not just teaching stuff that doesn't work. But what he was talking about is I forgot which one of them. He was on Lex Friedman, which is intellectual, martial arts through the roof, and and Rogan and all these. And I forgot which one, but he was talking about, and my wife was listening too, and she's like, "Oh my God!" 'Cause she's very intellectual as well. Why are you guys so good? And he's about, you have to teach the fear. He's like, we put each other in the worst positions. And so what he was talking about is, why are his good guys so good at submitting people, finishing? And he was saying it's because he trains them not to be scared to risk the submission, because a lot of the time you risk submission, you put yourself in a bad position. And so how they dealt with that is you put each other in horrible positions all the time, knowing that mentally you're comfortable getting out of those. So if your submission attempt fails, it doesn't matter, because if you get put in a bad position as a result of that failure, your mind isn't panicking, saying, oh shit. You can get out of it and get another submission. And just his understanding of that is why he's had so much success. And that aspect is, I think, the Gracies don't do so well at. Even though they talk and write, I don't see it in Gracie combatives. I don't see it in the training. They have to start thinking about the mind, the application, what's our goal, right? If you know you're not going to die in a match, which they're not, why be scared of going for risky submissions? Like, why be scared? And if it's a points thing, well, if you finish, the points don't really matter, do you? And that's just really understanding where he's coming from. And it's like, I'm guilty of what he's talking about, being scared of putting myself in a bad position and not going for submissions. And it's like, wow, it's just like he really gets it. You know?
Yeah, a couple comments on that. I think Gordon Ryan was talking about that too, where that YouTube where Craig Jones almost got him in his the Jiu-Jitsu straight armbar, but Gordon ended up getting out of it, but he took a lot of damage to his arm. That was amazing. I mean, I think that got like millions of hits, or that was a crazy fight. And Hickson mentioned in his that podcast we were talking about, where when he was younger, he goes, I was like a teenager. And then I was training with men, and this one guy got me, and I think it was, I can't remember if it was, I think it was probably like a head and arm, like Kezagatami. And he's like, I couldn't get out. I started to panic. I started crying afterwards. And then I went home. I had one of my brothers rolled me up in the carpet, so I would stay there. And he's like, in Rio, it was so hot. So I could get comfortable with it. So I think that type of training is important. Like we, for instance, with, especially if you're doing a competition team, you might have the best guys in the room. Like no one mounts them maybe. Because, I mean, if they're the top guys in the studio and no one can get certain things, you still got to practice it and put them in bad positions, because maybe it's not going to happen here, but it's going to happen someplace else. On the competition mat, you've got to put yourself in bad positions, especially in like a combative sport for sure. But I'm not familiar with, a lot of, I know the Gracie combatives gets a lot of attention. I probably should look into it, but I really haven't looked into, really what it entails.
Without offending them, it's cringeworthy as a Krav Maga instructor.
I can't even comment on it, because I really don't know much. The only thing I know is, don't they teach their Gracie combatives like to students first before they even go into?
Possibly. That I'm not sure about.
And it's more like their self-defense thing? Is that kind of?
Yeah. Well, it's the way I could be wrong, because they could have changed it, but it just seems like the way they teach it is the way they used to teach it like 50, 60 years ago. And it just like, because one of the things that I tell people this all the time, it's like nobody thinks of this, is that, okay, 100 years ago, who knew how to do martial arts? Who knew how to really fight? Well, it's the wealthy people like the Gracies, or the people that they pay to learn it and defend them. Because for most of human history, the average human being was just like useless, for lack of a better word. Now we have this perception that the internet, like everyone knows everything. Well, I mean, that's still not true, because let's say maybe 5% of the world trains reasonably consistently, and then a small percentage of the world actually trains to a high level. That's still a lot of people who are untrained, but even the untrained now can go on YouTube. Why, like in street fights, people start to mimic what they see on the UFC. So they're not coming from a place of nothing now. They're coming from a place of something. So any athletic idiot who watches enough MMA could probably pick up a few things and do quite well on the street, unless they run into a trained individual.
Yeah, they can get together even with their buddies in the backyard and just practice, right?
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff doesn't work that much anymore because it works great against complete useless people, but it's not going to work against someone who has even a little idea about resisting, unless you have a high skill level, of course.
Yep.
So things have changed.
Who was the UFC fighter that he passed away during? What was his name? He went. I mean, we're talking about
Evan Tanner. Yeah,
he was the one who went into the desert, right? And he ended up.
Yeah.
But I remember he made a comment once that he learned Jiu-Jitsu, basically just watching, and if I'm not mistaken, he came from a wrestling background. So for him, it was probably easy to learn it. He can kind of adapt and get an idea. He's good at grappling, holding the body from wrestling. And he did really, really well. But remember Mike Wolf I was telling you about?
Yeah.
Super cop at our school, because he trained. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. He made a comment about that too. He goes, you start with the MMA craze going. He's like, you did start to see people who were just not really trained, but they just watch things. They watch MMA. They, maybe they get together with their buddies, and we're looking more like, the younger male audience, right? Who, unfortunately, right, that's where a lot of problems happen. With crazy. Yeah. And he goes, they try stuff on you. They try to guillotine you and stuff. And it's just, you can see that having that exposure with information out there at your fingertips, that it does have people trained.
Yeah, and actually, interesting you bring up the point. So, and I'm not a master wrestler or anything by any means. I just teach from what I know. But if I've had wrestlers sitting in the corner when I'm teaching single legs and stuff, and I don't want to teach a single leg where I shoot my head on the outside. I know they arch up and go around the back. I don't teach that in Krav Maga. And they're like, oh, that's the way you got to do it. It's good. I'm like, here's the thing. Every idiot will pull a guillotine. And unless you have the skill not to panic, you screwed up. And the other thing is, most of the time you're going to DDT yourself on the concrete. Okay. So I always teach it head, ear to hip, head down facing the middle line, because you have to think about, I can't take that head hit to the concrete, even if I could on a wrestling mat. So again, it's understanding the context. If a D1 wrestler, I'm not going to tell that level of wrestler what to do. Right. They're going to run circles around me. But if they're teaching that to cops, I'm like, you're doing it wrong. Because how many cops are going to get to your skill level to avoid that problem? They're not. So you have to teach them the techniques that keeps their head protected and doesn't allow their head to get smashed in the concrete, even if you take the takedown. And so that's kind of what you guys, I know you wanted to talk about sort of the policing aspect is, it doesn't matter how good you are. You can't just teach it to cops. You have to understand all the possibilities of what can go wrong for them and try to teach what will work while avoiding those concepts. So it's an interesting world when everyone thinks they're right.
It is a very interesting world. Now I have to ask you a question before I forget, because you had said you have one of the, did you say one of the only Krav Maga schools in the area? So
one of the more consistently
surrounded by BJJ schools, and you're the guy to go to for Krav Maga training.
Sort of. Complicated question. So I mean, there were schools here before I came. I learned from some people, but when Jiu-Jitsu took off, it took such a huge part of the adult market that if you couldn't appeal to people, you basically shut down. And a lot of the schools shut down. So when I say I'm one of the only Krav Maga schools, there are others, but I'm the only one that's running a legitimate program where there's real-time development up the rankings locally. Okay. There's IKMF here and whatever, and the instructors are good. They know what they're doing, but they're not developing people. Sorry if you're listening, you're not doing that. If you're teaching pistol disarms their first day, I despise that. I think there's so much wrong with it, but that's what people want to learn. And it's your job as an instructor to educate them. No, you're not learning that yet. So I'm the only one with a consistent, legitimate program that's developing people. as far as that. And everyone knows come to me for Krav Maga, but I'm fighting an uphill battle against the MMA guys or the Jiu-Jitsu or the established individuals, regardless of their style in the city, because they don't like me, a lot of them, because I have a big mouth. I don't hold back. I call bullshit. So I don't play the social game enough, and getting police contracts or working with police in Canada is exceptionally difficult, and you got to play the politics, and I don't do that. Right. Half the stuff I say on this podcast, automatically someone's going to hear it and be like, nope, we can't learn from that guy. Even if I'm one of the guys who needs to learn from. And if you don't want, there's a guy I just had on a podcast a while ago who used to run the ERT here, and he's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. So he's, more of them are going to go to him, and by all means, absolutely, he knows what he's doing. But in the absence of having a guy like him, it runs into this situation where the cops are going to want to learn from the wrong types of people.
Well, it sounds like you were saying, though, you expand, though you're training jujitsu too.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So, I mean, that starts adding so much to what you have to offer.
Yeah. Cause now I know if, like, for private lessons, I can teach you jujitsu. I can teach you basic judo. Like, I'm not going to teach you to the level of a Jokin, but I know enough that, hey, here's some judo throws. Here's some double and single leg takedowns. Here's some basic grappling stuff. Depending on what the needs of the people. People here in Vancouver don't like to pay money for private lessons, so we cannot get I charge what I charge, but it means I don't get as many private lessons. And to be honest, I don't like teaching Krav Maga privates. I love teaching Jiu-Jitsu privates, but I'm still a purple belt, so they'd rather go to a black belt, which is reasonable, because there's so many in the city. So it's every city is different. Vancouver is a weird place. You cannot take the models you try in other cities and apply it here. It just doesn't work. Like COVID, for example, a lot of people here are freaking out because they think they're going to shut down the businesses again, which I want to metaphorically smack these people for even thinking that. But it's like, I know the culture here is, just because government is saying stuff and just because people are saying stuff, the way people behave here is very different versus Toronto. If everyone's saying we need to shut down, we're going to, because in BC, even if I talk to people, they're like, yeah, of course we need to shut down. That's the healthy thing to do. It's like, then you watch all the people breaking all the rules. So it's a very weird place here where what people say and what people do are not the same thing. And if you don't understand that, you're going to have a panic attack. A lot of people do, who, if they come from a very rigid, like what they say is what they do, it's laid back here. So it's a hard place to get a feel on. And a lot of businesses from America that try to do well here don't, because it's just a different market. Like, I know when Zellers in Canada got bought out by Target, and they thought, and this isn't specific to Vancouver, they thought they could just change the brand name and their brand would do enough to succeed, and then they ended up just closing it all a year and a half later after a fortune, because different markets, different approaches. You gotta realize the big box store model doesn't really work in Vancouver. We don't have, Canada, we don't have the population to do it. Unless you're a really established brand, then you have one, maybe two stores. That's it, and people will come to you. So it's people always forget about this. Applying the model from one country to another, it doesn't transition. So that when I said to you, Krav Maga is not that popular here. Part of the reason that I've, got out of some of the Israelis twist their arm a little bit is if they come, even it doesn't matter how big their name is. Like, I could get a Yel Yanilov to come here. He's not going to get a 100-person seminar in pretty much any city here. He's going to get 20 people.
Wow.
Even in Toronto, you're just not going to get it. Because in America, you'll like in New York, you could just the amount of people there, you're gonna get 100-person seminar.
Yeah.
And so the Krav Maga world, in many
You'll
ways,
have a 100-person class.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you have a 100-person class in Vancouver, like, I want to know what you're doing, because I don't see that anywhere. So they kind of turn their back on Canada for that reason. We don't have the numbers. People don't like to commute here. People don't care what your name is. If it's not convenient for them, they're not going to do it. So Krav Maga never really took off in this city or in this country. Even in the early days, it failed to really explode, and all the big organizations just abandoned it, for lack of it. They'll always be like, if you want to get certified, go to America. And we're like, no, come up here. And even when I don't like to bring people for seminars anymore. If they want to do a instructor certification, maybe, but even then, it's not even worth it for me to bring them up because I got to pay their hotel, I got to pay for their basic thing, and it's just lack of development of Krav Maga. And then when MMA and Jiu-Jitsu took off, I'm fighting with those guys, and a lot of those guys look at me, either they think I'm nuts because the way I approach things in life, or my skill in jiu-jitsu is not as good as theirs, so they think I don't know what I'm talking about. So you run into this. But I'm like, listen, you want me to set up a really effective self-defense seminar for 8 hours? I guarantee you I can do it better than you. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to get them to bite. And since I'm not a salesperson, it's an uphill battle all the way.
So, Jonathan, what do you see as the future of just martial arts then? So you don't see it in Krav Maga in Canada?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always going to teach that. If I was to open up my own, because I rent from a friend of mine, I've had my own schools, but it's a really tough market here. So I've closed. I rent from a friend of mine, and they teach jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. Mm-hmm. And I do my jiu-jitsu with them. But if I was to open up my own permanent location again, I would have probably 2 days or a little bit of Krav and the rest jiu-jitsu. One, because I like jiu-jitsu. And by the time I'm a black belt, I'll be able to teach it. And if I'm to run a kids martial art, which you have to do if you really want to do well, because if I say I'm going to teach kids Krav Maga here, well, in North America, that's hard to sell. Here, people are like, oh, I don't want my kid killing each other. I'm like, what the heck have you been reading, man? So I would just have a kids martial arts program. Mm-hmm. And I would run day 1, day 2 is self-defense and kickboxing, boxing, and day 2s, are the grappling, where I teach them the jiu-jitsu. So I'd say day 1, parents do shorts and t-shirts. Day 2, they're in a gi, So that's how I would run it. And the kids will learn Krav without realizing they're learning Krav, basically.
Yeah. The kids, for us, I know they enjoy the striking aspects. We kind of pull more for Krav Maga. And then they like their jiu-jitsu. I mean, all kids like to roll around and wrestle.
Yeah.
And then they like the, they like the Kali aspect of the, Kali, we do the sticks, the blades. They, you give padded weapons that they work with. I mean, the kids go bananas over that. So that's a little bit of a mix that we give them. So yeah, but that is something that I find to attract a lot of the kids. I like to give them a little bit of a diverse program. Mm.
And then when they're an adult, they can pick, they have the really good skill levels to do. And you know what, because I'm sure you know this, you get parents who have no real idea about anything, but they saw something on the internet. So that's why I said for kids, I think if you want to teach them Krav or integrate self-defense, you need to sell it as a kids martial arts program. Yep. Because every parent is like, I want my kid to do martial arts. It's like, oh, what are they going to learn? Well, I'm going to teach them self-defense, wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu. And then they're like, oh, wait, I can learn all of that for one price. And then boom, it's easier that way. I haven't been able to try that because I need to open up another school. I'm several years away from even thinking about that again.
Are you going to wait till you get your black belt?
I would, because there's the jiu-jitsu community here is so developed. So my coach, Mike Hansen, I just had him on a few episodes ago. Mm-hmm. When him and his partner started, they were blue belts, and that was 10 or 12 years ago. Well, back then you could do that. You could get away with that. Not happening anymore. Not happening.
Back in the day, you were a purple belt. You were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Purple belt.
So you need a black belt 100% if you want to run a program. And I was running a program a little bit as a early purple belt. I did bring in another person to help me teach. And I think it's a mistake to do that now. You can't. I didn't have a good enough grasp of the system yet. So I would wait for my black belt. Also, it's a financial thing. Vancouver is an exceptionally expensive city. Anything you ever read that says Vancouver is one of the most livable cities in the world that's been paid for, it's bullshit. It's livable as in what we get here is amazing. But as far as money, it's one of the top 5 most expensive cities in the world because the salaries you're getting in compared to what things cost, they do not match up. So like Manhattan, you're getting paid. Yeah, Manhattan's expensive, but guess what? You're getting 200,000 a year, no problem.
well. Yep.
Good luck getting that in Vancouver, unless you want to be one of those 24/7 sales types, and I am not that. And some of those guys can make a fortune no matter what they're selling, but it's just like it's a difficult city, and so to rent a 6,000 square foot space like you have, which is amazing in Vancouver, you're looking at $10,000 a month probably in a place. And good luck getting the student base for that kind of facility. It's not happening,
It's a big risk, man.
Yeah.
Once you sign that lease, there you go. Yeah.
Even a place that's $3,000 a month, if you don't have the students, you're not paying rent and all your bills and paying yourself a living salary. It's not happening. The schools that are doing that here usually started a long time ago and have built up their programs from 20 years ago, or they are catering to the MMA or Jiu-Jitsu people, which they can get the numbers. And even then, they don't have huge facilities, right? Even the biggest schools here, you're looking at like 1,000 square feet mat space only, usually. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're just not, because the real estate is so expensive. And, a lot of people, good prime real estate is not worth it for for martial arts school. And the cities often, their zoning, you're going to be stuck in some industrial area, which is not accessible. So it's a very tough city to succeed in for martial arts. And for everyone who's survived through COVID, like, good for them. A lot of people had to close their doors. Jiu-Jitsu community did pretty well, but I don't have my fingers on the pulse of like Taekwondo or karate guys, but I imagine they got wiped during COVID.
We had a lot of martial arts schools that closed. A lot of them have closed too, like who done, just throughout the years, if you did a martial art that was like karate or taekwondo or kung fu or something that I think most people think of it as like an older kind of martial art, most of them I've seen, they've closed their doors. It's just not where people are looking to study that.
Yeah.
So then when COVID hit, that probably really just was a punch that just But Jonathan, I have to go in just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can just say I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope your listeners get something out of it.
Hope so too. Yeah, just make sure you share it too. A lot of the guests don't like to share stuff, and then they wonder why is no one listening. Hey, did you share it? Oh,
of course.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, do you have any last words that you want to make sure you get to your students or anyone who wants to think about coming training with you?
Well, I would just say, even if there's people listening that, if they're even instructors, been in the business for a long time. One of the things that I pride myself with is, I run a very, just a school that's well run, if anybody has any questions about just running a school, to always reach out to me. I'd be glad to help them, because been in the industry a long time. And I would say that's one of my skill sets, is just to be able to run a business doing it full time. A lot of people do it part time. For me, it's full time, and I'd be happy to help anybody if they want to chat about that.
Awesome. And now, where would people find you on the internet, email, social media? Where do they find you?
Yep. Well, they could find me on Facebook. They can find me on Instagram. They can find me under the school name, CT Krav Maga and MMA. On Facebook, they can find me also just under my name, Dennis Hill. And email, I don't know, it's info@ctkravmagaMMA.com. And, if you put that in the show notes, they can always reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Have a good one, Jonathan. Nice chatting with you.
You're listening to The Warrior's Day. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions.